She said it like a punchline, loud enough for the back row of the yard to hear. We're open now. The sentence didn't drop. It detonated. Conversation stopped mid-laugh. Forks paused mid-air. And some poor guy halfway into a rib bite just blinked like the barbecue sauce had short-circuited his brain. A woman near the cooler turned to her husband and whispered something into her drink. I stared at her, not in shock, not in anger, just waiting. I knew Lisa had a taste for theatrics, especially once she had rosé in her, but this wasn't theater. This was a calculated move, a social ambush disguised as enlightenment. She looked around, expecting applause or at least a cheer of "You go, girl." Instead, she got silence, heavy, awkward, then laughter, forced and brittle, from one of her yoga friends. She basked in it like a cat in sunlight. That's when I decided to say it. I turned to the other end of the table. Natalie, her friend from work, younger, sharp dresser, always too friendly, in a way Lisa claimed was just how she is, and apparently she was how she is at every gathering we hosted lately. Lisa never seemed to mind the way Natalie laughed too long at my jokes or touched my arm when she thanked me for the wine. I once asked if she thought Natalie had a thing for me. Lisa had laughed and said, if she did, I consider it a compliment. All right then. You free this weekend? I asked Natalie. Lisa's smile collapsed halfway through her sip. She didn't put her wine glass down. She gripped it like a handle on a sinking boat. Natalie blinked once. Then, like someone had cued her with a spotlight, she smiled, wide teeth and everything. I can do everything better than her, she said, flicking her hair back like we were already packed for the trip. You could hear a leaf fall. Lisa stared at me, then at Natalie, then back at me. There was a sharp clink as someone set their fork down too fast. Cheers, I said, raising my glass to Natalie, who clinked back without missing a beat. Lisa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. And here's the part that always gets glossed over in stories like this. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't blindsided. I'd been watching her warm up to this little performance for months. The extra solo brunches, the sudden interest in podcasts about ethical non-monogamy, the smug, almost academic way she started dissecting other couples' relationships when we hosted game nights. This wasn't spontaneity. This was a setup. She thought she was delivering the plot twist. Instead, she met mine. If you're still with me, take a second and tap subscribe. More than 97% of the people listen without subscribing. And honestly, it helps our team bring you more stories like this one. It means a lot. Anyway, back to the party. Lisa stood slowly, setting her wine down as if it were the most delicate thing in the yard. Are you serious? She said, but her voice cracked on serious. It didn't reach me. It just hung there, like stale smoke. I turned to her and smiled the way you do when someone pretends not to know the rules of a game they invented. I'm just playing along. Isn't that what you wanted? Her friends were still frozen. A few of the husbands looked suddenly very interested in their beers. Natalie had already crossed her legs toward me, as if we were mid-date. You embarrassed me, Lisa hissed. No, I said, you embarrassed yourself. I just followed your lead. It was like someone had opened a trapdoor under her. The confidence drained from her face. The thing about power? It only works when people believe you still have it. She didn't, not anymore. She stormed inside, heels clicking across the deck like gunshots. Someone tried to make a joke to defuse the moment, but it died the second it left their mouth. I leaned back in my chair, sipped my wine, and turned to Natalie. Hope you don't mind cabins. I found one by the lake. Quiet, no Wi-Fi, just space to unwind. Natalie smiled. Sounds better than whatever this was. The rest of the night moved on like a movie where the main character dies in the first 10 minutes. Awkward, confused, too quiet. Lisa didn't come back out, but her announcement had already changed the weather, and I wasn't done playing her game. Not by a long shot. She cornered me in the kitchen half an hour after the guests thinned out, face red, not from wine this time, but fury that hadn't settled into a shape yet. She stood there like a shaken soda can about to pop, arms folded so tight it looked like she was holding herself together by force. You embarrassed me, she snapped. I was drawing a plate, slowly, deliberately. No, I said, not looking up. I followed your lead. She blinked. That wasn't the script she had expected. Lisa always assumed she'd throw a grenade and I'd panic, try to defuse it, beg for clarity, for boundaries, but I just handed her the pin and stepped back. No explosions, just consequences. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. Instead, she marched upstairs, heels thudding like punctuation marks. I heard drawers open, then close, then open again. I knew what she was looking for. Control. Too late. I finished cleaning up, took my time, let her sit in it. That night, I left my phone on the nightstand. Screen up on purpose. She saw the glow before I even pretended to sleep. I wasn't texting, just checking the final details. I had nothing to hide now. Her rules. Remember? Lisa sat up slowly. "Whose table for two the dock house with?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Guess," I said, flipping the screen toward her. Her face tightened. "You actually made a reservation? With Natalie?" "I thought we were open," I said, sitting up. "I'm just honoring your choice." She stared like I'd just stabbed her cat. "You're not serious?" I stood, walked calmly to the closet, and pulled out my weekend duffel. Not a sock out of place. I'd packed it earlier that afternoon, before the party, just in case she did exactly what I suspected she would. "Oh, I'm serious. Lakefront, 2 nights. I figured I'd learn what openness really looks like. Full immersion." Her voice dropped. "So, what, this is revenge?" I tilted my head, amused. "Is it, or is this what you wanted? I'm confused. You made a public declaration in front of 20 people. Are we retracting that now?" She didn't answer. The next hour was quiet, unnaturally so. Lisa wandered the bedroom like it didn't belong to her. She stared out the window. She didn't cry, not yet. Her brain was still sprinting, trying to outrun the reality she'd launched without a return ticket. Her performance had backfired. At one point, she sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "You've never done anything like this before." "No," I said, zipping up my bag. "I was monogamous, because we were." "Are you really going to sleep with her?" she asked, voice smaller now. I met her eyes. "Does it matter? You announced to a group of people that our marriage is now a suggestion. I'm just following your leadership." Her lip twitched like she wanted to say something scathing but couldn't land it. I walked to the door and paused. "I'll be back Sunday night. Maybe, unless you've declared something new by then." She didn't speak, just stared at the floor. As I pulled out of the driveway 20 minutes later, I saw the blinds in the upstairs window shift slightly. She was watching, probably trying to convince herself it was a bluff. But Lisa had always underestimated one thing about me. I don't yell. I don't throw plates. I just listen and act. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. She gave it to me. Now I was going to return the favor, one quiet move at a time. By Monday morning, Lisa's phone looked like it had been dipped in ice. No new texts, no callbacks, just a dead signal from the people who used to orbit her every update like it was gospel. Natalie hadn't replied to a single message. Not a hey, not a question mark, not even a passive-aggressive like on her last Instagram post, just a big echoing silence. And then the photos surfaced. Not from me, I'm not that stupid, but someone staying at the same lakeside resort clearly had a better sense of timing than Lisa. First photo, the fire pit, 2 glasses of wine, my arm casually draped behind Natalie's chair. Second, a blurry candid of us walking back from the dock, her leaning in, laughing at something I'd said. Third, a boomerang from someone else entirely, Natalie twirling in the kitchen, barefoot, my flannel shirt hanging loosely around her shoulders. Lisa must have watched those images load one at a time like gut punches. It wasn't just that they were together, it was how easy we looked, how unbothered, how real. She threw her phone across the bed but picked it back up immediately. She scrolled the group chat, our social circle of 10 years, built over barbecues, wine nights, and ski trips. The chat was still active, a few reactions, a meme about Mondays, nothing directed at her. She typed, "Hey, anyone want to do drinks this week? I could use a girls' night." Seen, no replies. Then finally, Amanda, the woman who once called Lisa her soul mirror, replied 6 hours later, "Think I'm going to sit this week out. Too much awkwardness." Lisa typed out 3 different replies before deleting each. Finally, she sent, "Awkward how?" Amanda didn't answer. Lisa swore, grabbed her phone, and dialed Natalie, straight to voicemail. She tried again, same result. Then she texted, "Please call me. We need to talk. About boundaries." 3 bubbles. They appeared, hovered, vanished. That was worse than no reply at all. Later that night, Lisa tried her usual strategy, spinning the narrative. She texted Olivia, the most diplomatic one in the group. Just need to vent. He's making this really messy. The reply came 2 hours later. You made it weird. He's just doing what you said was okay. That was the moment it hit her, not just jealousy, but a deeper nausea. Lisa had always prided herself on being the center of gravity, the trendsetter, the one who everyone rallied behind, even in her dumbest decisions. But now, the group chat wasn't hers anymore. Her words weren't sacred. Her rules had been followed and twisted into a mirror she didn't like looking at because she wasn't the one holding the spotlight anymore. And Natalie, the harmless friend she used to dismiss with an eye roll, had stepped forward without hesitation, hadn't just said yes. She'd filled the vacuum Lisa created. Lisa called me. I let it ring. She sent a text next. Can we talk? I let it sit. Because here's the part she never understood. When you open a door thinking you're clever, you better be damn sure you're ready for what walks through. And what walked through this time was silence. Her silence. The group's silence and my silence. And there's nothing louder than being ignored by the people who used to cheer you on. I walked through the door Wednesday evening like I'd come back from a business trip. No tension in my shoulders. No guilt trailing behind me like smoke. Just silence. And the faint scent of whatever sage-infused candle Lisa had lit to make the house smell intentional. She was in the kitchen, phone clutched in one hand, half a glass of wine in the other. She didn't say anything for the first 10 seconds, just looked at me like she wasn't sure if I was a dream or a problem she had hoped would solve itself. You're home early, she said finally. I set my bag down by the stairs. Traffic was light. She looked for signs, wrinkled clothes, a bite mark, guilt. I gave her none. I was collected, calm, different, and it terrified her. So, she said, running her finger along the rim of the glass, did anything happen between you two? I looked at her for a long moment. Not cruelly, not smugly, just looked. Let the weight of her own questions sit between us like wet concrete. We agreed to transparency, I said, but if this bothers you, maybe it was never real for you. That line, God, the way it landed. She blinked but didn't move, didn't sip, just stood there like someone slapped her through glass. I didn't think you'd actually do it, she muttered. My voice was low, colder now. You did. She stepped back like the words had volume. It was just a comment, she tried. It was a joke. People say things. At weddings, I said, people say things. At birthdays, at toasts. But you made a declaration in front of our closest friends. You didn't flinch when you said it. And you didn't clarify afterward. I was drinking, she offered. So was I, but I didn't rewrite our vows between cocktails and coleslaw. She slammed the glass down a little too hard. The stem wobbled. I didn't mean for you to just run off with her. I didn't run, I replied. I walked, calmly. You opened the door. I used it. She dropped into one of the bar stools, looking suddenly very small in her own kitchen. It's different when you do it, with someone I know. I tilted my head. And Natalie? She wasn't flirting with me for months? You didn't notice, or did you like the attention until I accepted it? She couldn't answer, because she had noticed. She liked being the one who everyone secretly envied, the wife whose husband was attractive enough for her friends to whisper about, but loyal enough never to act, until now. She tried again. I just didn't think it would go this far. And yet here we are. For a few moments, neither of us moved. There wasn't a storm anymore, just fog, heavy and dense. She broke it first. So what now? You're just gonna keep seeing her? I haven't decided, I said truthfully. But I do know one thing. I'm no longer asking you what's allowed. And just like that, the ground under her started to crack. Not because I shouted, not because I cursed, but because I didn't need to anymore. The man who used to orbit her moods, cater to her angles, was gone. And the one who returned wasn't waiting for instructions. Lisa tried to reset the game, but I had flipped the board, and she was just now realizing the rules had changed and she hadn't written the new ones. She planned the birthday dinner like it was a diplomatic summit. Reservations made 3 weeks in advance, curated guest lists, customized menus with the birthday girl's name embossed in gold foil. She even ordered floral centerpieces despite swearing they were a waste on people who don't notice detail. Lisa needed this night, not just to show grace under pressure, but to reassert herself, to remind everyone that she was still the hub, still the organizer, still the sun they revolved around. I was never officially invited. She never said the words, "Don't come," but she didn't say, "Please do," either. And that silence, that's where I live now. No longer orbiting, just drifting outside the bubble she was trying to patch back together. She wore her confident face, the one she used for charity galas and PTA meetings, smiling like she hadn't been watching Natalie's Instagram stories on loop for 3 days, like she hadn't noticed how many mutuals had stopped liking her posts. She showed up early to the restaurant, chose the best angle at the table, and made sure her voice was the loudest for the first round of cocktails. It worked, until 10 minutes before the entrees arrived. Her phone buzzed. "Birthday girl, hey, just wanted to say thank you again. This is really sweet of you." Lisa smiled, tapped out a reply, then another text came in. Same contact. "But I thought you were joining us again tonight." Lisa froze. A third text seconds later. "He already celebrated with us yesterday. Brunch at Willow Creek. He even brought that Pinot I love." Her fingers hovered over the screen like she'd forgotten how to use them. Photos followed. There I was, arm around the birthday girl in a friendly hug, table full of mutuals, laughing mid-toast, and next to me, Natalie, in a summer dress Lisa used to own, one of her old favorites, in fact, donated after she said it was too young for her. It wasn't too young for Natalie. It looked perfect. Lisa's face stayed still, but the energy behind her eyes cracked. She didn't speak. She just slowly lowered the phone and blinked like someone had replaced the script of the evening without warning. "Everything okay?" someone asked. She smiled automatically, but the corners of her mouth twitched, uncoordinated, brittle. "Yeah," she said, voice too bright. "Just a weird work text." The rest of the table kept chatting, unaware. But Lisa wasn't really sitting with them anymore. She was in that photo, on the outside, looking in, because this wasn't just me skipping a dinner. This was a social rerouting, and she knew it. Her carefully maintained network, birthday girls, brunch crews, couples game nights, was reorganizing, quietly, strategically, without her. And here's the twist. It wasn't about vengeance. I hadn't blocked her, hadn't badmouthed her, hadn't told a soul she was unraveling. I just moved on. I showed up first, took the seat she used to occupy, poured the wine she used to choose, laughed the way I used to laugh when she was still the center. Now, she was just inviting people to her version of the story, hoping they hadn't already seen a better one. And most of them had. She waited until Thursday morning. After 2 sleepless nights and a half-hearted spin class she bailed on halfway through before making the call. Not to a friend, not to me, to an attorney. It was quiet, discreet, a number she'd saved years ago under Sierra Wellness. A euphemism only she understood. Back then, it was just insurance. A just-in-case, a backup plan for a storm she never thought she'd be in the middle of. Now her fingers trembled as she tapped the name, heart stuttering like it didn't want her to find out what she already suspected. The office was sleek, cold, the kind of sterile elegance that makes your life feel like a case file the moment you sit down. The attorney, a sharply dressed woman in her 40s, didn't waste time on pleasantries. "So," she said, scanning the intake form, "you're inquiring about the protections in your prenup?" Lisa nodded. "Is your husband initiating divorce proceedings?" Lisa hesitated. "No, not yet. I just want to know where I stand. Legally." The lawyer folded her hands. "Well, the prenup is clear on asset distribution. If he initiates divorce on grounds of his own infidelity, he receives nothing. That clause is ironclad." Lisa exhaled like she'd just surfaced from underwater. "Right, good. But," the lawyer continued, flipping the pages, "there's also this, Clause 12, subsection B." Lisa leaned forward. "Marital misconduct," the lawyer read aloud, "includes public declarations, behaviors, or statements that willfully or recklessly damage the perceived integrity of the marriage in the eyes of mutual social or professional networks." Lisa frowned. "What does that mean?" The attorney looked at her directly. "It means if either party says or does something publicly that undermines the legitimacy of the marriage, even without physical cheating, it could be considered breach." Lisa blinked. "But that's vague." The lawyer smiled without warmth. "It was vague by design. You agreed to it." There was a pause. Then, "I didn't think he'd actually use any of this," Lisa said, more to herself than anyone. Was there a public statement? The lawyer asked. Lisa hesitated. At a party. I said something. I may have, implied we were open. Verbatim? The lawyer asked. Lisa swallowed. I said we're open now. Who was present? Close friends, neighbors, at least 20 people. The lawyer didn't flinch. Then yes. That might qualify. Lisa sat back slowly, her legs suddenly numb. But it was just a comment. It wasn't filed with the court. I didn't put it in writing. You made a legally binding verbal declaration, the lawyer said, steepling her fingers. In front of witnesses, while your husband remained silent until he later acted in accordance with that declaration. Lisa stared at the marble floor, trying to process the weight of her own voice. If this goes to court, the attorney continued, his actions can be interpreted as compliance, yours as initiation. You could be considered the one who fractured the contract. But I didn't cheat. Doesn't matter. That clause isn't about intimacy. It's about perception, social narrative, the collapse of trust. You kicked that door open in public. Lisa's mouth was dry. And if he files? What then? The lawyer didn't answer immediately. She just folded the papers gently back into the folder. Then you're the one who has to prove you didn't destroy the marriage. And unfortunately, there are now photos, stories, testimonies. The room suddenly felt 5 degrees colder. Is there a way to undo this? Lisa asked, voice breaking. Possibly, the lawyer said, but not quietly and not cheaply. Lisa nodded slowly, eyes unfocused. She had always treated that prenup like a sword above my head, a quiet little weapon she never needed to draw, until now, when she realized she'd been swinging it backwards. And this wasn't a scratch. This was a self-inflicted wound, with a signature at the bottom. Her own. The second bag by the door hit her harder than the first. Neatly packed, black leather, same one I took last weekend, except this time I didn't say much. I didn't linger in the doorway, didn't ask if she needed anything while I was away. I just moved through the house like it wasn't hers to ask questions in anymore. She followed me around with that brittle energy, the kind people have when they know they've lost, but still think maybe, just maybe, if they perform grief just right, they can claw something back. So you're going again? She asked, like I was headed to war. I looked up from zipping my jacket. Yeah. With her? I raised an eyebrow. You want transparency, right? She didn't answer. I tapped the side of my phone. I'll be unreachable. Try not to schedule any more announcements while I'm gone. That one landed. Her face didn't flinch, but her hand gripped the banister tighter than necessary, her knuckles whitening like she was holding in something acidic. I left before she could ask anything else. And then the weekend came. Not for me, for her. It started with silence. The kind that wasn't peaceful, the kind that had weight. She walked around the house like a stranger. Every room looked like a version of her life she no longer had the password to unlock. The walls still had our photos, but they looked like strangers in matching outfits. Even the damn fridge magnets felt distant. She checked her phone every 15 minutes, pretending she wasn't. No notifications from me, none from Natalie. Friday night, she opened a bottle of wine and drank half of it standing up in the kitchen. She played a playlist we once made together on a trip to Santa Fe, but the songs didn't land the same. Too many lyrics about love, too many notes she used to think were hers. By Saturday morning, she was pacing. She called Natalie, straight to voicemail, called again, same. Texted, hope everything's okay, just wanted to check in. No reply. At noon, she drove to the mall, bought a blouse she didn't need, caught herself trying it on and staring into the mirror too long, tilting her head left, then right, unsure when her reflection stopped looking familiar. That night, she stood in the living room, phone in hand, staring at the screen like it would confess something. She scrolled through old texts from me, stopping on the ones she used to ignore. Updates about work, little photos I sent from business trips, stupid puns I made while waiting in TSA lines. She smiled once. Then her face collapsed right back into blankness. The house creaked more than usual. Or maybe she just noticed it now. Every sound felt sharp. The ice maker made her flinch. The sound of a car passing outside had her craning her neck toward the blinds like I might appear, like this might still be a game, and I was coming home early to surprise her. But I didn't come home. Because this time, I had nothing to prove. No one to chase. No apology to deliver. I was exactly where she told me I could go. She sat on the stairs around midnight, barefoot, wrapped in a throw blanket, scrolling through Instagram again. Natalie's account was still public. No new photos, no tags. Just one cryptic story posted earlier that afternoon. An out-of-focus shot of lake water, her feet in the frame, painted toenails captioned Peace is Earned. Lisa watched it twice. Sunday came, no church, no brunch, just hours. She tried calling Natalie again, straight to voicemail. She finally sent me a message. Let's talk? Just want to reset everything. This feels wrong. I saw it, didn't answer. She sat in the kitchen with her phone face up like she was giving it CPR. And then, as night fell, she did something she hadn't done in years. She looked at herself in the dark kitchen window, not fixing her makeup, not checking her reflection, just looking, like she didn't recognize the woman on the other side. And maybe she didn't, because the mirror doesn't lie. And it was finally starting to show her the cost of the door she opened, and the man who stepped through it without looking back. The invitation had come a week earlier, a mutual acquaintance, someone from their couple's book club that hadn't devolved into wine and gossip until the fourth meeting. A cocktail night, semi-formal, catered, hosted in one of those glass-walled lofts that looked better in photos than it felt in person. Lisa saw it as a lifeline, a public setting where she could reclaim dignity, reassert her place in the circle, remind everyone that she was still the gravitational force, not the woman you read about in whispers or group chat side threads. She arrived early, not aggressively early, just enough to get a good seat and screen the entrance. She wore a dress she hadn't pulled out in 2 years, something sleek, black, sharp at the collar, the kind of outfit that said, "I'm doing fine," without begging anyone to ask. She greeted the host with poise, exchanged air kisses, even made a joke about parking like nothing in her life had crumbled. Then she spotted the clipboard at the reception table. Guests were signing in, one by one. It was supposed to be casual, but the names still sat there in clear ink, organized by couple. She skimmed the page. There it was, David and Natalie. Her hand went slack around the wine flute she hadn't sipped yet. The air got thinner. She moved toward the back of the room where the lighting was lower, pretending to check her phone. She typed half a text to me, then deleted it, then typed another one to Natalie, deleted that too. She could feel the sweat bloom under her arms. She tried to convince herself they wouldn't show. And then, there they were, David. He walked in with Natalie on my arm, the two of us looking like we'd been together for years instead of days. Her hand rested easily on my chest as I said something to the host. I was laughing. Natalie smiled in a way that didn't seem forced or theatrical. It seemed comfortable. Lisa's eyes zeroed in on the detail that hurt most. We were holding hands, not glued to each other, not desperate, just connected. I saw her. I looked her dead in the face and walked right past. Didn't stop, didn't blink. Just nodded to someone behind her and led Natalie into the crowd like Lisa wasn't even part of the room's geometry. Someone at the bar, a guy she barely knew, said it a little too loudly. Probably already 2 martinis in. Guess being open worked out for someone. A couple women laughed. One of them covered her mouth right after, like she hadn't meant to. Lisa turned away fast enough to spill some wine down her wrist. She dabbed it with a napkin, trying to breathe like she hadn't just been gutted. She stayed an hour longer, long enough not to seem like she left because of them. But she never got control of the room. Not once. Her comments didn't land. Her jokes were acknowledged, not enjoyed. Every time she laughed, she was wondering if I heard it and whether I cared. I didn't. She watched from across the room as we moved through the night like we belonged, laughing with old friends, slipping easily into conversation. There was no tension, no guilt. I wasn't flaunting anything. I was just being. And that crushed her more than any grand gesture ever could, because this wasn't retaliation, it was replacement. She had made a public declaration, and I had become its fulfillment. Now she was the one trying to rewrite the story, but no one was listening. The people who used to orbit her gravity were spinning somewhere else. And the worst part, they weren't looking back. She didn't sleep, not in the way people mean when they say it. She lay down, she tossed, she counted things, ceiling tiles, regrets, silent apologies never spoken aloud. And sometime around 5:30 a.m., after watching the sky shift from black to navy, she picked up her phone and finally typed what she thought would be her olive branch. "Let's talk." I overstepped. "I want us back." She sat staring at those words for 5 full minutes before hitting send, thought about softening it, adding a smiley face, removing the word overstepped, replacing us with what we had. But no, she kept it direct, clean, vulnerable. And then she waited. The phone didn't buzz, no typing bubbles, no read receipt, nothing. She showered, dressed, made herself breakfast she didn't eat, stared out the window like she expected me to appear in the driveway the way I used to, bag slung over one shoulder holding a coffee for her in a flavor she always pretended not to like but finished every time. By noon, she'd checked her phone 27 times. By 2, she started rehearsing what she'd say if I knocked. Soft, open palm things like we lost our way and we can rebuild. Lines from shows, from books, from places people go when they're out of language and trying to borrow someone else's ending. At 4:17 p.m., the doorbell rang. She almost tripped getting to it. No one was there. Just a single envelope on the mat. Thick, heavy, her name written neatly in handwriting she'd memorized years ago. She picked it up with shaking hands. Back inside, she sat at the dining table. The same one where I once surprised her with an anniversary dinner. The same table where she once laughed, half drunk, declaring in front of friends that we'd never be boring. She opened the envelope. Inside, a separation proposal. Legal, pre-negotiated, thoughtful in the most painful way. No cruelty, no vengeance, just terms. Assets divided, logistics mapped, signatures marked with yellow tabs, and on top of it all, a small square post-it, my handwriting, still neat, still unmistakably mine. This is what open looks like when the door swings both ways. She stared at it for a long, long time. And here's the moment, the one that broke her. She realized I hadn't just gone along with her impulsive declaration. I had completed it. I had followed her logic through to its final conclusion. She played with the concept like it was a flirtation, a party anecdote to show how progressive she was. I took it like a contract and delivered, clean, quiet, unapologetic, no begging, no fighting, no tracking her down to demand explanations. Just the conclusion she thought she could control, sent to her door like a final chapter in her own handwriting, rewritten by someone she no longer had access to. She didn't cry right away, not because she didn't want to, because crying would make it real, would mean admitting the game wasn't mutual anymore, that it hadn't been for weeks. She folded the paper slowly, reread the post-it, ran her thumb across the ink like texture might change meaning. But nothing changed, because this wasn't just an answer, it was the end. And she was the one who set the first line in motion. Weeks passed. Lisa re-emerged the way someone does after a storm they pretended wasn't coming. New haircut. Shorter, cleaner, the kind women get when they need something to mark the line between before and after. She hosted a small gathering in the backyard again. Same string lights, same playlist, a little less wine this time, a little more curated laughter. This was her attempt at normal, a dinner under the guise of reconnection. Just a casual evening, nothing dramatic, she told the group chat. She invited the usual suspects, even a few people she hadn't spoken to in weeks. Extended the olive branch thinly veiled as charcuterie. She practiced her grace in the mirror before people arrived. Smiled without showing teeth. Tilted her head at just the right angle when she laughed. She was performing normal, hoping it would become real. She even wore white, bold choice, statement piece. The kind of dress that says, "I'm fine," in cursive. The evening began well enough. People complimented the setup. Someone asked about her yoga certification. She spoke just a little louder than necessary when describing how centered she felt lately. And then, right around the time the first bottle was emptied and the second was uncorked, someone, poor, sweet, oblivious Amanda, asked the question, "So, how are things going between you and David?" The table went still for just a beat too long. Lisa had been waiting for this. She'd rehearsed it. She smiled, inhaled, then froze. Because at that exact moment, a voice from the gate said, "Sorry we're late." Every head turned, and there I was, not alone. Natalie walked beside me in a soft blue dress, holding a bottle of wine and a pie, store-bought but carried like it was sacred. We moved like a pair who'd always been one, not clinging, just comfortable, no introduction needed. Lisa's mouth parted slightly, words queued up but never came. We walked in like we belonged, because we did. There was no tension in the crowd, no awkward energy. People greeted us, smiles, nods, warmth. One of the guys even stepped aside to clear space at the end of the table. We slid in. Natalie set the pie down. I poured us each a glass. Someone clinked a fork against their wine glass, half a joke, half a cue. "To new beginnings," they said. I raised my glass slowly, looked directly at Lisa, and added without a hint of venom, just calm steel, to new beginnings, honest ones. Lisa's hand tightened around her wine glass, the smile she had stitched into place trembling at the corners like a paper crown in the wind. She didn't toast, she didn't speak. The crowd moved on. Someone made a joke about the wine, a story about a dog, laughter, noise, but none of it reached her. She sat there frozen in place, eyes locked on the space where I used to sit beside her, where Natalie now sat, effortless, unbothered, entirely real. And here's the thing. There was no cruelty in it, no fireworks, no grand monologue about betrayal or justice, just a shift. The world turned slightly, and she wasn't the center anymore. She had opened a door in front of everyone weeks ago, loudly, proudly, and I had stepped through it quietly, completely, and never looked back. She tried to shut it, but it was too late. Because some doors don't close once you make a spectacle of opening them. They just swing wide and invite the future in.